Okay, all right, good morning. Thank you for your time. This webinar is to go over the annual report for ESSER funds. For those of you who did this last year, it'll be really familiar. There are a few changes. The timeline is a little different. One or two questions were added, and also the way we plan to collect this information is going to be a little different. But first, see if it'll let me go to the next slide on this. Okay, there we go. I was thinking, I don't know how many of you know me, so I thought I'd briefly introduce myself. My name is Aaron Kennedy. I'm over data and reporting for really all things ESSER. I'm a bit of a data nerd, and that makes me sound more impressive than I actually am for the most part. I'm just making graphs and charts. That's really all I do. I've been in federal programs for about a year now. I was in student transportation before that, so maybe that's where a few of you might know me from. So that's me. All right, and as a heads up, we're probably going to be doing multiple webinars. A lot of that depends on information we continue to receive from USED, and also depending on any other sort of questions or concerns that pop up. If anything big or important does come, we'll pass it on to you as soon as we can. All right, and with reporting, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there that no one likes doing reports. It's really frustrating when you have to stop what you're doing and tell some Yahoo millennial from Boise what you did over the past year, especially when I don't know anything about you or your job. So in acknowledging that, we really appreciate your help with this report, because sometimes you just have to put things on hold. But we really wouldn't be able to do this report without you. So thank you very much for your time and effort with this. As far as why we're doing this report, basically it's because the federal government is requiring us to do it. With all the COVID relief acts between the CARES Act, CRSA, ARPA, all of them have language stating that annual reports are to be done. USED last month, they sent out a 60-page document covering everything required for this report. And I'm assuming most of you don't want to read a 60-page document. So we went through all that for you and tried to find what was relevant. We can send that document to you if you like. The first third of it is really only for state agencies. The last third of it was about next year's report. So again, we can send that to you if you like, but hopefully this PowerPoint will go everything you need. And as we kind of mentioned, this same report was done last year. For those of you who are interested, there's a link on this slide where you can go to and look at that report. I'm actually going to be touching on a few of those things in a little bit. Okay, so on to this year's report. Again, for those of you who were around last year, it'll be really similar. For those of you, this will be more of a reminder. And kind of the way we're going to go about this is, if you think of it as kind of a two-pronged process, most of what we're going to be focusing on today is what exactly we're reporting. So this is the timeline we're going to be focusing on, the specific funds we're talking about, and also the different ways those are going to be organized. Later, we're going to talk about how to report it. And you might be wondering how exactly you're going to get all this information to us. And our official response to that is a very good question. In short, we're working on it. We are working with a different company to help us out this year. They've done the same report for like 11 or so states last year. From what we've seen, we're excited about it. It should be pretty easy to work with. Until then, we ask that you don't send us any information. Because of the scale of data we're collecting, somewhere over 100,000 data entries, there's a problem with human error in consolidating all the information accurately. So because of that, we're asking that you hold off on sending this information until we have that reporting tool ready. When it is up and ready, we'll notify you, and we can even do another webinar walking you through how exactly that works. We don't really have a whole lot of definitive deadlines or timelines at this point. A lot of that's because we're combining state deadlines with federal guidelines. So tentatively, we're hoping we can have that reporting tool up March 13th to April 21st. Again, if anything switches over to a hard deadline, we'll immediately let you know. Now, because of federal guidelines, we don't really have a whole lot of flexibility in extending deadlines. In fact, last year, Idaho was one of a few states who did request an extension on this report, and every state was told no. This year, again, the question was raised about an extension, and again, USED said there won't be exceptions. So in light of that, we'll do our best to help you out beforehand to make sure that you know exactly what we're needing. All right, so now we'll actually focus on what we're reporting this year. Most of this will be really familiar again, but we'll try to highlight a few changes. But first, one thing that gets a little confusing is the federal government has different terms for all these pots of monies than what other states or even at the local level are using. Just for the sake of this reporting, we have to go off of what USED is referring to everything as. In the GRA, these are all the Idaho terms that we see. If you have some confusion on what exact pot of money and expense came from, you can contact us. We'll work with you on that. But yeah, these are the terms that we have to report everything as. And as far as the timeline, last year, the timeline was a little confusing. It was an 8-month window we were reporting on. This year, it makes a little more sense. It's a full 12 months that we're reporting on, going in line with the state fiscal year. So the reporting timeline is for purchases that were reimbursed between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. Last year, there was a little bit of confusion on this. So just to clarify, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail on this. But these are for when expenses were reimbursed between July 1st and June 30th. To our understanding, this is just to help USSED be organized in their reporting. And I'll go over 2 examples, hopefully make sure that I'm explaining this properly. For example, if you purchased something in June of 2021, but were reimbursed in August of 2021, because the reimbursement happened in this reporting period, you will need to report that expense. But conversely, if you purchased something in June 2022, but weren't reimbursed for it until August that same year, because the reimbursement happened after the reporting period, you won't include that expense in this report. However, eventually all expenses are going to be reported, both at the federal level and the state level. Those exact reimbursement totals are tracked. Because we already know the totals, there's no incentive to overreport or underreport. It's not going to help you or hurt you to include more funds or put in less funds. We just have to have the exact amounts. And yes, I did say eventually all expenses will be reported. So if this is news to you, yes, there will be another report next year. And I apologize if you did not already know that. All right. So I touched a little bit on what we already have. We already know how much each LEA has spent, and we already know which pot of money has come from. But USSED is asking us to be a little more detailed with this report. Specifically, they're asking for plans and also various ways these funds were used, which ultimately is why we're needing your help to fill out this report. So as I mentioned, we already know the funding source, and we have some details on the expense types you had. But USSED came in and said, that's not enough, we want more. And they added this third variable to track everything as, which is spending category, which includes funds spent addressing physical health and safety, meeting students' various needs, mental health supports, and also operational continuity and other uses. Now, based on some reports, we do have some details on how you used your funds, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough for us to be really confident in how exactly where to group these among the spending categories. So again, that's why we're asking for your help in filling out this report. So what we're asking you to do for now is to go through all of your funds that occurred in the reporting period and to go through each one of these columns and add a bullet point to each one of those purchases. For the funding source and the expense type, that should already be tracked. We can help you a little bit with that if you have questions. But it's this middle one, the spending areas, where we're going to need your help from. And just as a side note, to our knowledge, no other state was previously tracking this kind of information. So don't feel like it should have been something that you need to have tracked. You don't need to worry too much about that as far as what you've already done in the past. One kind of nice thing about this, though, is USSED isn't asking for detailed dollar amounts regarding funds from the CARES and CERSA set-aside funds. They're only asking for a yes/no response if you spent any funds towards those spending areas. It'd be really nice if the rest of the report was that this simple, but unfortunately, that's not really the case. So going along with this, this is just an example to kind of help illustrate how exactly these funds are being tracked. This is from that 60-page document. It's just a screenshot. I don't know how exactly it's going to look in the reporting tool yet, but hopefully this can just try to help better explain what exactly we're looking for. But for each of these 4 pots of money from the mandatory or flow-through amounts, you'll need to break it down in those 4 spending categories. One thing we specifically asked for with the software was to keep track of the running total. That's just to make sure the math is adding up correctly, because like I said earlier, we do have to have exact amounts. So for each of these different pots of monies, once you've put them into the different spending categories, you'll then be asked to break them down even further. So this is here we're just looking at funds that were spent towards addressing physical health and safety. From there, you have to break it down into the 9 or so expense types. And again, the software should keep track of a running total and make sure that all the numbers add up correctly. Reason why we kind of focused on that is we did have a few issues last year where the amounts weren't adding up correctly. One example I can remember is one LEA spent about $10,000 from one fund. And when they broke it down like this, the numbers added up to $10,001. Because it was only $1 off, USSED said we can't submit that. Now, again, with the software should be able to help you find those errors beforehand. So hopefully we don't have that issue from here. And again, when we have the reporting tool up, this hopefully will make a little bit more sense. But for now, that's everything regarding the exact dollars that are being tracked. Everything from this webinar gets a little easier from here, I promise. But another question USED is going to ask is how you plan to use these funds. This was asked last year, and USED didn't really have any follow-up questions about it. And they did mention that they're understanding that your plans may change depending on needs and circumstances. And here at SD, we're going to have the same idea, but they will ask you to report as a percentage how you plan to use these remaining funds. Keep in mind, this is based off of information accurate as of June 30th of 2022. And it's incredibly likely you have since spent funds in the last 7 months. When we asked USED that, they mentioned in that case, those funds you did spend, they said to report them as if you had planned to spend those funds. So just for example, let's say you spent 10% of your remaining CARES reserve funds on addressing mental health supports. In that case, you'd put 10% in that box and then add to it if you plan on spending more. Again, we didn't get any follow-up questions from USED, so hopefully this isn't something you need to spend too much time on. All right, so that's the complicated part involving numbers. This next part of it, USED calls a cross-act. This is regarding really anything across all ESSER funds. And for the most part, they're true-false questions. Most of these were asked last year, and because they're true-false, for the sake of time, I won't go into a whole lot of detail about these. We didn't get any follow-up questions from USED about these, so hopefully they're not as time-consuming to figure this all out. I will give a brief comment on this. So from that summary USED sent out earlier this year, they did include how many LEAs nationwide provided home internet access. And we compared that to what we did here in Idaho, and it was actually incredibly similar. Nationwide, about 40% of LEAs tried to provide home internet access for students, and in Idaho, it was also 40%. And not that it's a competition, but when it comes to going through different methods of re-engaging students with poor attendance or participation, Idaho is about 15% more likely than the rest of the nation to do that. Even when you break it down by different category, Idaho is much more likely to do this than the rest of the country. Again, not a competition, but good job, everyone. Going along, again, more true false questions. If you have any concerns about this, you're welcome to talk to us about them, but most of these were asked last year and USED didn't really have any follow-up questions for us. This next one, this question was not asked last year, but again, really nothing overly complicated they're asking for, just the true false amount. All right, last question for this year's report. And the good news is it might actually even be optional. One document said it was required. One document said it wasn't required. When we talked to USED, they said it should be optional. We're assuming it will be optional, but I wanted to bring it up just in case that changes. But what USED is going to ask is, well, potentially asking this question, is if you used any ESSER funds for the following positions, if you paid any part of their salaries with ESSER funds, they'll ask you to report as an FTE count all those positions. The interesting part is they're not asking you to break down the dollar amount by position. They just want a total dollar amount, but a little interesting, but that's what they ask for. Again, this question for now is optional, so you're welcome to put it on low priority. However, if that changes and they say it's required, we'll let you know as soon as we hear that. All right, that's everything for this report. Bit of a dense presentation, a lot of information. But for next year's report, I'm not going to go over that now. I don't want to overload you with information, but USED did give us a little bit more insight on how this is going to work going forward. So our plan is sometime earlier in the school year, we'll start working with you a little bit more on this report. The idea is we just want to spread out the workload. We don't want you to have to spend only 6 weeks on this report. We'd rather you spend 6-8 months on this, because I'm sure we'd all have more time to worry about things. The report will be really similar. There will be a few more questions. And again, we'll go over those questions later. I don't want to overwhelm you at this point. But there is one question we wanted to bring up just because it potentially could be a little difficult to address. It was actually initially included in last year's report, and then USED last minute changed their mind and said, no, it's optional. This year, they're not asking about it at all. But for now, it looks like next year, they will be asking this. And what they're going to be asking is that for all those various different interventions and participation methods on the left there, they're going to ask if you spent any ESSER funds on those for each of those, they're going to ask you to break it down in terms of enrolled eligible students in the subgroup and eligible students in subgroup participating by demographic. When we've talked with other people about this, it sounds like very few LEAs are keeping track of this in as detailed a manner as US Ed wants. For the most part, it seems like people are only keeping a head count, which is totally understandable. No one's really keeping track of the race or the economic background of these students. Again, we've had a lot of concerns about this just because we don't know how feasible this question is. We can't promise if US Ed will decide to make it optional or not, but we at least wanted to make sure that you were aware of it so that when this comes next year, it hopefully doesn't catch you too off guard. All right, so just a few things to look out for in the near future. If we get any updates to the current report, we'll pass that on as soon as we can. Once we have more information about the reporting tool, we'll pass it on. We'll let you know anything and everything regarding that. And probably up until the fall, when the next school year starts, we'll start working with you a little bit more on next year's report. All right, a lot of information, and I'm sure you're going to have questions. If not now, you'll probably have questions later because we definitely keep having more questions about this. But to help you out, here's all the contact information for everyone who should be able to help you out. We did make this ESSER reporting at sd.idaho.gov email. All of us SD employees who deal with ESSER funds have access to this. While it says reporting, it really can be anything ESSER related. I know what it's like to send an email and not be able to get a response because the individual didn't see it or because they're out of the office. So if you have a bit of a time concern with getting a response quickly, you can send out to the ESSER reporting email. Hopefully one of us will see that, but you're still welcome to contact one of us individually. I did also include Brian Butkus on here. He's a little bit newer to the federal programs team. I think he joined last October, November. He's our financial specialist principal. So if you have any very specific finance questions, he'd be the best person to contact. But we're not going to have any problems with you contacting the wrong person. I don't really think there's the wrong person to contact. All right, so a lot of information. I went through this very quickly. I apologize, but there's just a lot to go over. So the rest of the time is really going to be for any questions or concerns that you have. So yeah, I guess we can take it off mute, or you can include things in the chat. We'll go over your questions. We'll do our best to address them all. Again, some things we're still waiting from US Ed to hear about, but we'll do our best to answer your questions.
Aaron, can you go back to the period that
yes.
you're requesting information for?
All right.
There was a question about what they were going to be reporting on. So if you could just kind of explain that it's what's reimbursed during that.
Okay. So I'll go over that again, and no, I'll do my best to explain this. But we're going back to the previous state fiscal year. So anything that happened in the last, 7 months or so, you're not going to be reporting on for now. This is just how US Ed wants us to report that. I hope this addressed your question. So I guess I'll just go through the chat at this point, line by line, and hopefully I address your questions. I apologize if I don't do it completely. Next question, please provide a save option this year so it can be completed in increments. Yes, when we met with the company, that was something we specifically requested, was that this could be saved. They did show us that feature, so you can do this where you can save work on it from anywhere. When we have more information on the reporting tool, we'll get that out to you. But yeah, that was one thing we specifically requested. And please email business managers and the entire blank applications when available. We have all the data input. Yes, we are currently working on getting all that pre-filled data, so to speak, of the expense totals. We do have that. We're just double checking the numbers to make sure they're correct. We'll also have that uploaded to our website, and we'll send that out too. All right, the next question. We need a blank report and ability to save. Okay, yeah, right. When the reporting tool is up, you'll be able to print off what exactly we're asking for, so you can use that as a reference. Please send a blank report so we can start it. Seems like a lot of people are wanting a blank report. That was definitely requested a lot last year. Hopefully we can have that up within the next week or two. For this upcoming reporting, are we reporting student? So this year, you will not be needing to reporting student demographic information. Some of this information has already been reported, and I can get that from various departments here. So that's not something you won't need to worry about this year. Regarding interventions and participation, would it be fair if we do not track this, just use our school info? For the one regarding interventions and participation, because we've had so many questions about this from USAID, once we hear more information about it, we'll pass it on. Unfortunately, I just don't have a whole lot of definitive statements yet. I think part of that's just because they're not worrying about it until next year. But once we get more information about how exactly to address that question, we'll pass that on. Is there any way to get a hold of these questions to be answered before the reporting tool is complete? What I have right now, I could send you that 60-page document. It is a little difficult to read. Unfortunately, that's the best thing we have at this moment. But again, once the reporting tool is up, we'll definitely have that posted for you. Hopefully this PowerPoint has kind of shown exactly everything we need to address. But yeah, we'll be sure to post everything. And yes, we will be posting this PowerPoint as well, hopefully today or tomorrow. Next question, if we did the report last year, will we be doing it again? Yes, any LEA or any entity that was awarded funds during the reporting period is going to have to fill out the report. Even if you did not expend funds in the report, you still need to mark that you did not expend funds in the report. So yes, everyone will be required to fill this out again, whether or not you filled it out last year. Is that 60-page document posted to the SD website? No, but we could probably work that out, figure that out. We'll see how that works. All right, again, sorry, I'm going through these questions really quickly. I just have a habit of talking very fast.
Could you move up a couple slides, please?
Yes, I'll just go slow and let me know when you would like me to stop.
I believe the next one. Nope. It's one with the categories.
I believe. Is this the one you're speaking of?
I typed a question, but I can't.
Oh,
I'll
sorry,
just
I
read
must
it
have
as
missed
well.
it.
Well, no, I'll hit it again. I was just wondering, you know, the mental health for academic, social, emotional, including mental health supports, and then there's the mental health support. Like, how do we distinguish between those two spending areas when we provide mental health support?
Right. So one of them you will include the funds spent towards mental health supports, and the other one won't include mental health supports. So it does say excluding mental health supports. So
All right.
those will be.
Sorry, I missed the excluding there.
Oh,
I
no,
saw
no worries.
I thought it's including.
No worries. Yeah, mental health supports is its own subcategory. All right, well, we'll continue to sit around for a little bit in case you have questions. You're welcome to put it into a chat, or you can take yourself off mute and ask a question if that's easier for you. All right, well, I'm not getting, oh, one more question. Ooh, has there been any clarification from ED for definitions of each of those 4 categories? We have one from last year, but when I checked this yesterday, they have not provided any updated ones. Austin, if you want, I can get you last year's. I can't imagine they've changed a whole lot, but I can certainly get you last year's definitions and then provide an updated one if you like. Okay, well, the chat box seems to be slowing down a little bit. So, oh, good, more questions. If we've used all of and reported all of our ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds, what will we still have to report on that? Well, in your situation, you won't have nearly as much to report on. There still will be a few questions to report on. This year's report will be including reports on ARP ESSER 3 funds. So if you're awarded or expended any of those funds, you'll need to report those as well. If you don't have any ESSER funds remaining, for the most part, I think you really only have just 3 or 4 true or false questions to address. You will be expending ESSER 3 funds. All right, so in that case, then there will be a few questions for you to report on. But in your case, where you've already expended all the ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds, it will be a little bit of an easier report for you to fill out. So a few people might be a little jealous. All right, I guess we'll do a final call for any questions. And again, I'll quickly go back to the, oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that. I'll quickly go back to the last slide with all of our emails for you to look at. Again, we'll get this posted to our website so you can go back and review it later. Okay, all right, well, this didn't take nearly as much time as I thought it would, but again, thank you for your time with this, and thank you for your help in filling out this report. Again, we have a number of people here who are more than happy to address any questions you have. And when we do get any more updates from ESSER, we'll be sure to pass that on. All right, we thank you for your time, and we'll hope to see you all later.